The world knows Muhammad Ali as one of history's greatest fighters. But there's a story that rarely gets told. A story about the woman who taught him that true strength isn't about how loud your voice is. It's about the courage to live by your convictions. This is that story. Odessa Grady Clay was not a famous woman. She was not known for her words or her public presence. She was known, by those who loved her, for something far more rare and far more valuable. She was known for her consistency. In 1942, in Louisville, Kentucky, Odessa gave birth to a son. His name was Cassius Marcellus Clay, Jr. The world would later know him as Muhammad Ali. But on that day, he was just a baby, small, vulnerable, and completely dependent on his mother. Odessa came from a world of hardship. As a black woman in the American South in the 1940s, her life was defined by limitations that were not of her making. But she carried herself with a quiet dignity that suggested she had made a choice. She would not let the world's limitations define her spirit. Louisville in the 1940s and 1950s was a segregated city. The laws were clear about where black people could go, what they could do, and what they were allowed to become. But inside the Clay family home, there was a different set of laws written by Odessa. She raised her children, Cassius Jr. and his younger brother Rudolph, with a fierce insistence on education, dignity, and principle. Not through loud proclamations, not through angry speeches, but through the simple daily act of living according to her values. Odessa was a devout Christian. Her faith was not something she talked about constantly or with great volume. It was something she lived. Every day she practiced her faith through her actions. She was kind when kindness was not expected. She was honest when dishonesty would have been easier. She was dignified when the world told her she had no reason to be. Young Cassius watched all of this. He watched his mother navigate a world designed to diminish her, and he watched her refuse to be diminished. My mother, Ali would later say in interviews, never raised her voice, but when she spoke, you listened, because you knew she had thought about what she was going to say. She didn't speak carelessly. In the evenings, after school, Cassius would sit with his mother. She would speak to him about the world, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a kind of calm certainty about what was right and what was wrong. She told him that his skin color did not determine his value. She told him that his circumstances did not determine his destiny. She told him that the most important thing he could ever own was his dignity, and that no one could take that from him unless he allowed them to. These were not revolutionary words, but they were revolutionary in the way she lived them. When Cassius was 12 years old, his bicycle was stolen. A white boy had taken it, and in 1950s Louisville, the police would do nothing about it. The young Cassius was devastated. He told a police officer that he wanted to whoop the boy who had stolen his bike. The officer, with a kind of accidental wisdom, suggested that Cassius learn how to box. This chance encounter would change the course of history. But what shaped that history was not the boxing ring. It was what came before the ring, a mother's teachings. Odessa did not push her son toward boxing. She did not see it as his destiny. But when he came home and told her about his new interest, she did something that would prove to be one of the most important moments of his life. She listened, not just with her ears, but with her full attention. And then she said something simple. If you're going to do this, you're going to do it right. You're going to be disciplined. You're going to be respectful. And you're going to remember that your body is a temple. These were her values, and now they became his values. Throughout his teenage years, Cassius Clay became a skilled boxer. He won amateur championships. He traveled. He began to develop the confidence and charisma that would later define Muhammad Ali.
But the foundation remained: his mother's lessons about integrity, about discipline, about the importance of living according to your convictions. When Cassius Clay turned professional in 1960, he became known for something unusual in the boxing world: a fighter who talked. He boasted. He made predictions. He broke the silent, humble tradition of boxers who let their fists do the talking. Many people saw this as arrogance. They saw it as disrespect. But Odessa understood something that others did not. Her son was not being arrogant. He was being consistent with his convictions. He believed in himself, and his mother had taught him that believing in yourself, truly and fully, was not a sin. It was a necessity. In 1964, at the age of 22, Cassius Clay defeated Sonny Liston to win the heavyweight championship of the world. It was one of the greatest upsets in boxing history. But that same year, something far more significant happened to Cassius Clay. He made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He joined the Nation of Islam. He changed his name to Muhammad Ali, and he began speaking publicly about his faith, about racism, and about his refusal to accept the world as it had been presented to him. The nation was shocked. The boxing world was scandalized. Journalists attacked him. Politicians denounced him. Even many of his own supporters turned away from him. But Odessa did not turn away. In an era when being associated with the Nation of Islam was deeply unpopular, Odessa supported her son's choice, not because she necessarily agreed with every aspect of his beliefs, but because she understood something. Her son was living according to his convictions, and she had taught him that this was the highest calling a person could have. In 1975, after nearly a decade of banishment from professional boxing, Muhammad Ali fought Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship of the world. He won. He had not fought in those years, but he had not wavered. His mother's lessons had sustained him through years of rejection and isolation. As Ali grew older, he began to teach his own children the lessons his mother had taught him. He spoke to them about integrity. He spoke to them about the importance of principle over popularity. He spoke to them about the kind of strength that comes not from force, but from conviction. His daughters would speak in later years about sitting with their father and listening to him explain why he had made the choices he had made. They would speak about his quiet insistence that they live according to their own convictions, not according to what the world expected of them.
My father taught us that real strength is about knowing who you are, Ali's daughter Layla would later say. And that came from my grandmother. It came from the woman who raised him. As Ali entered his 50s and 60s, the effects of his years in the ring began to show. He developed Parkinson's disease. His body, which had been the instrument of his will for so long, began to fail him. But in those later years, when reporters would ask him about his regrets, about whether he would make the same choices again, Ali would always point back to the same source, his mother. My mother taught me that the only thing that matters in the end is who you are, Ali said in an interview in his 70s. Not what you achieved, not how much money you made, not how many titles you won, who you are. And I try to live that way because that's what she taught me. In 2017, Muhammad Ali died at the age of 74. His funeral was attended by hundreds of people. World leaders came, athletes came, ordinary people came, because Ali had meant something to them. But in the private moments after the funeral, when his family gathered to remember him, his children spoke about one thing above all else: the legacy their father had passed down from his mother. They spoke about the importance of principle. They spoke about the courage to stand alone if necessary. They spoke about the quiet strength that comes from living according to your convictions. And they understood, as their father had understood, that these lessons had not originated with Muhammad Ali. They had originated with a woman named Odessa Clay, who had raised her son in a segregated city in the 1940s and 1950s, and who had taught him something that no one could take from him: how to be truly strong. In the end, what the world remembers about Muhammad Ali is his voice, his bold statements, his refusal to back down, his famous proclamations about being the greatest. But what shaped all of that, what made it possible for him to make those statements with authenticity and conviction, was something his mother had taught him long before he ever stepped into a boxing ring. True strength is not about how loud you can speak. It's about the courage to speak what you believe to be true, even when the world is telling you to be silent. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about the discipline to never hit without purpose. It's not about how much you can achieve. It's about maintaining your integrity in the face of any cost. Odessa Clay was not a famous woman. She did not write books or give speeches or change the course of history through her own actions, but she raised a son who did all of those things, and she did it through the simple daily act of living according to her convictions. The story of Muhammad Ali and his mother is a story about the kind of strength that rarely makes headlines. It's the strength of a mother who raises her child to be true to himself. It's the strength of a son who honors his mother's lessons by living them out in the world. It's the strength that comes not from volume or force, but from principle and conviction. In a world that often celebrates the loudest voice in the room, this is a story about how the quietest voice, the voice of a mother teaching her child to be true, can shape the course of history. It reminds us that real strength is not about how much noise you make. It's about the courage to live by what you believe, no matter what the world thinks. It's about raising children or living our own lives in a way that honors something deeper than fame or achievement or recognition. It's about being true. And that lesson, taught by a quiet woman in Louisville, Kentucky in the 1940s and 1950s, echoes through time. It echoes in the life of her son. It echoes in the lives of his children. And it can echo in our own lives if we choose to listen to it. Muhammad Ali was famous for speaking truth to power, but the real truth was taught by his mother long before he ever said a word. The real power came from living according to your convictions, even when no one is watching, even when it costs you everything, even when the world tells you there's no point. That is the story of Odessa Clay and her son, and it is a story that perhaps we all need to hear. If this incredible story of a mother's quiet strength and a son's lasting legacy moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to remember the importance of principle and conviction. Have you ever been inspired by a parent or mentor whose quiet strength shaped who you are? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about the people behind history's greatest legends.